Hello and welcome to episode 43 of Hitting the Bar, the football podcast. I'm Chris Karle.
And I'm Geoff Saunders.
Well, Geoff, finally, we're off and running.
Yeah.
Since the last podcast, we've had the first round of games and a couple of games in hand. Let's start with your trivia question, however.
This is a very simple one. Who holds the record for the most career goals in the top flight? So the old First Division or Premier League. Who holds the record for the most goals over a career in the top flight?
In the top flight? All right, we'll get the answer to that at the end of the show. So, it all started last Wednesday.
Yeah.
And it didn't start well for our favourite whipping boys, Arsenal, the Gunners, the Woolwich.
The Woolwich Wanderers, yeah. They have been... I was about to say they have been terrible, but actually they've been worse than terrible. They've gone quite a long way past that. They're embarrassing.
Yeah, they had a loss, of course, to Manchester City. Routine for City. But Arsenal, I mean, you know, people are wondering what's happened to them.
Well, it was a routine win for City, who looked rusty, looked as if they hadn't played for 3 months. Fair enough, okay. But Arsenal were just shockingly bad. There was no shape, no structure. It was very hard to work out what they were even attempting to do, let alone what they were actually doing, which was not very much. It was a terrible performance.
It was. Let's start with, on that performance, David Luiz, who we've just found out has signed a new 1-year contract with Arsenal. I imagine that Arsenal fans were hoping he'd be on the move. I mean, he is 33, so you could understand them getting rid of him. But he was responsible, first of all, through another defensive error, tangling up his own feet that led to the first goal. Then he gave away a penalty, which was scored, and got a red card, which hasn't happened since nobody's had that combination of errors since Carl Jenkinson, apparently, for West Ham in 2015. Yeah. 5 years, nobody's done what he did.
That's right. I think the only thing he could have done to make it the perfect night is tread on a rake on his way off.
Slipped on a banana or something.
Yeah, I mean,
it was comical, yeah. It was comical. So David Luiz, the gift, and Arsenal, the gifts that keep on giving. But then Arsenal, you know, you'd think, okay, they're a bit rusty. They were away at Manchester City, the second best team in the league. You could be excused for them being beaten. You can't, really, they can't be excused for the performance. Then they were away at Brighton, who've been fairly bad all season, most of the season.
Yeah, and they were worse.
Yeah, I don't know. They didn't turn it around, did they? They didn't pick themselves up and turn it around.
No, not at all. There was one line from a guy writing a letter into The Guardian after the report on the City match, and this Arsenal fan wrote, and this is what he wrote, he said, "God, I'd forgotten how shit we are."
He'd had a nice 3 months break from it all. Yeah, it is. I mean, normally the hope that kills you, but it's knowing what's coming next that's killing you with being an Arsenal fan, I imagine.
Yeah, but again, it was no shape, no discernible formation. They didn't have a clue. And Guendouzi, what does Guendouzi think he's doing?
Talk everybody through that, because not everybody will have seen it, but there was a shocking incident towards on the end of the game. Brighton scored a late goal to make it 2-1 to Brighton. I believe Brighton have won only 3 times this year, twice against Arsenal.
Twice against the Wanderers, yeah.
But then I suppose many teams could say that. However, there was a shocking incident at the death of that game.
Yeah, I think we have to go back to what Guendouzi would think of as the start of it, which was Moyes made a challenge on the Arsenal keeper, Leno, right on the edge of the penalty area. It was unfortunate because when Leno landed, he landed badly and stretched a ligament, maybe tore it. I don't know. I'm not sure. But he had to be replaced.
He did. He's going to be out for 6 weeks, apparently. Yeah.
And that flipped Guendouzi, over the edge, basically. Yeah. And I mean, he's a booking and a sending off waiting to happen every time it goes on the pitch. But this is what provoked it. And after Moyes scored, Moyes sort of went past him and reminded Guendouzi of all the rubbish Guendouzi had been talking or shouting at him throughout the match. Guendouzi shoved his arm out against the stomach of Moyes, who went down like he'd been shot. So,
yeah, I mean, he just brushed him, really. Yeah.
He just brushed him. So, Guendouzi shouldn't have done that. Normally he'd have been booked for that, but he wasn't. And then a scuffle started, and Guendouzi grabbed Moyes by the throat and threw him on the ground.
He did. He threw him to the ground. I mean, ridiculous.
I cannot remember any time in all the time I've watched football when that has not been an automatic red card for doing that. But he got away with it.
Yeah, and retrospectively, they normally look at these things and say, actually, yes, that was bad. I mean, all right, the flick of the hand to the stomach, Moyes overreacted, but to actually grab a player by the throat is a straight red card, and then throwing him to the ground, propounded the whole thing. But at the end of it, afterwards, Moyes said some very interesting things about Arsenal in general. And what he said that the player had been mouthing off all the way through the game. He said he was talking far too much. And as you said, he said, I reminded him that, you should be playing rather than talking. And he said, I told him he deserved it, losing 2-1, because he said, Arsenal players should show some humility.
To which the Arsenal player said, there's nothing wrong with my humility.
Yeah. He's right, though, isn't he, Moyes?
Oh, absolutely right, yeah. If you're going to mouth off on a football pitch, you've got to back it up with a performance. Otherwise, shut up.
Mm-hmm.
I think I told you the other day about the famous Mark Hateley incident, where he's playing for Rangers, and I think he was playing Motherwell with him. But this Scottish player, who nobody's ever heard of since, was mouthing off at him throughout the whole game. And Hateley turned around and said, why don't I sell one of my cars and buy you a house?
Nice. But it was one of those kind of things. I mean, Moyes, did his talking with his feet, as they say, and scored the late goal, and Brighton won.
And they deserved to win. They were the better team.
You'd never think you'd say that about that Brighton team that we've seen this season.
No, but
against the might of Arsenal.
Yeah, but Potter looks to be a decent manager, doesn't he? He doesn't have the resources that most of the other teams have, and he's created a team that, at the moment, when they need to, they're playing for each other, they have a structure, they stick to the plan, they execute well. So, he's shown himself to be a very good manager. And I think whether they stay up or not, he'll get a much bigger job than Brighton. As for the groundsman at Arsenal, what the hell is he doing? Is he doing anything apart from putting the cones out and watering the pitch?
I still don't get it with him. I'm still not convinced. We've said it before on this podcast, Geoff, you and I have spoken about it off air, as it were, that we don't understand why the Arsenal board appointed Arteta and not Ancelotti when they had the Ancelotti,
who showed at the weekend with the Everton's performance what a really, really good manager he is. If for anyone who doesn't know or has ignored Ancelotti's record as a manager, here was a reminder of it against the best team in the league by a distance, 22 points at the time, and he shut them down. Yeah. Well, that's what Arsenal could have had.
Look what you could have won, and actually won something. Yeah. Because he's a serial winner, Ancelotti. He's actually won things. And I know, you and I'm a Spurs fan. You're a West Ham fan. I suppose we are biased a little bit against Arsenal, and we do enjoy doing them down, I suppose. But really, they're making it too easy.
They are making it too easy.
They're providing material for us, and it's not our fault that we're doing them down. It's theirs.
Well, that's what I was saying. It's not that it's bad. It's gone beyond bad to terrible. It's gone beyond terrible. It's actually embarrassing.
It's a crisis now.
I think it is, because go back to when I started watching football, late 60s. There were an established set of really big clubs, and they were the big clubs, and they had the really big grounds, the grounds that you played FA Cup semi-finals on, the grounds used in the World Cup, etc. And now 3 of those are Everton, Sunderland, and Sheffield Wednesday. Now the Wanderers have gone down past Everton now.
That's bad. Yeah.
But look what's happened to Sheffield Wednesday and Sunderland since. Just because you're a big club and you have a lot of income doesn't protect you if you're not well managed.
No.
And they're on the way down. And really the only thing I think that could save them is getting a really good manager with a decent transfer budget. Now, Will they get a really good manager? No, they seem to be wedded to the groundsman for reasons which pass all understanding. And transfer budget? No, they won't, because Kroenke's money, all of Kroenke's money, is going to this super stadium in Los Angeles.
Yeah,
which was supposed to cost $2.7 billion, sorry.
Yes.
Which is, so twice what Wembley cost, but in fact ended up costing twice as much as that. It's up to $5.5 billion now.
There are small European countries that would be very, very delighted with a budget like that.
Well, that's the GDP of a small European country.
Yeah.
Now, in one of these perverse things that happens, Kroenke's wealth, his book value, if you like, has actually gone up 400 million in the last year, which is very strange. But
where from?
A lot of businesses that has his name on, if you like, and a lot of those are have made a lot of money in the past year. However, going from 2.7 billion to 5.5 billion, okay, the banks pick up a lot of that, but they pick up a lot of that at a price. And Arsenal are paying that price. They're generating a lot of money. They generate a lot of money, but it gets sent over to the States, and that's where it stays. Same as Manchester United.
Well, yeah, they're basically paying the interest and paying a few salaries, and they're just left to tick over themselves.
Yeah, So, I think an Arsenal manager is entitled to say, okay, we generated all this money, we need some for transfers, and Kroenke is saying, sorry, it's
gone.
It's going somewhere else, and he needs it.
So, obviously, they're not going to get the transfer budget. They didn't get the manager they should have. They went with Arteta, again, figure of ridicule for us. But they got Arteta, some are saying, because he's a club legend. That's never the way to go when you're appointing a manager.
Well, two of the biggest club legends in English football are Bobby Charlton and Bobby Moore. How good managers were they?
Absolutely dreadful. Yeah.
There you go.
They were, yeah.
Jackie Charlton was the better manager.
Yeah, he was not the better player.
And he's not in the top 100 best English centre-halves to play. It's a nonsense to say that because you were a good and popular player, you're going to be a good manager, because they got very little to do with each other.
Yes, it's not the same at all. Roy Keane, a journeyman manager, but a club legend at Manchester United. It doesn't always work. It very rarely works.
It rarely works, actually.
Tim Sherwood at Tottenham, not that he was ever a club legend.
Tactics Tim.
Yeah. Former player, shall we say. I wouldn't call Tim Sherwood a legend.
Well, I think the clinching argument is Jose Mourinho.
Never played football.
No, he did. He was reserve goalkeeper in the Portuguese league.
Yes, all right, yes, yeah. But, I mean...
There you go, reserve goalkeeper.
Reserve
never
goalkeeper.
Made it at the top.
Yeah, that's what I meant. He never made it, and yet... Despite your opinions of him, we'll come on to that in a minute. He has been a very successful manager.
He has been an extremely successful manager, yeah.
I mean, it's an analogy I've used before, but just because you're a good cocktail barman doesn't mean you can manage the bar.
No, quite.
Sometimes the two should be separate, and I think
absolutely.
The other thing about Arteta is he never actually has done any management. I mean, to take on a top six club like Arsenal, at least a year somewhere, like Derby, like Lampard did, or somewhere like that.
Exactly.
I would have liked to, not that I care because I'm not an Arsenal fan, but I would have liked to, if I'd have been an Arsenal fan, see him get some experience and then welcome him back as a legend who's taken whatever team, X-team, out of the Championship and into the Premier League, had a year's experience.
Yeah.
But I don't get it. I still don't get it. I know they've got no money, but they could have found somebody.
Well, yeah, and if you listen to what players at Manchester City have said and players at Arsenal have said, when asked what Arteta does, all they come up with is, he talks to us one-on-one and builds up our confidence. Well, okay, but that's one small part of a manager's job. And most managers come in pairs, one of which is the boss and one of which is the other guy. And very often it's the number two guy that does the arm around the shoulder. Oh, no, the manager likes you. You're playing what you can do better than this. Let's go and work on these things for you and build up their confidence. That's what the groundsman does. Really? You're paying him $5 million a year for that?
Yeah,
I can do that.
As you were saying that, I had this image flashing, sort of visual flashing in my head of Arteta calling Aubameyang into his office and him going, "Yes, boss, what do you want? I just want to tell you, you're worth it. Don't give up. You're a very, very good footballer." I mean, and what do you want me to do this weekend? Go out and do what you do.
Well, I think the key with somebody like Aubameyang is that's actually all you need to say to him, because he is that good. But what Aubameyang needs is some service. And you look at those two Arsenal games, and one of the best strikers in the Premier League. I think he's second in the scoring charts in the Premier League. 17
to Vardy's 19 or whatever it was. Yeah.
How many passes has he received in the penalty area?
Yeah, well, that's
one.
Yeah.
In 2 matches?
I mean, look at the City game. Arsenal had 2 shots the entire game, neither on target.
He was played wide left, not his best position. He is on the what used to be called a left centre forward, number 10, going down the inside left channel. That's his position. But you've got to pass to him. And now, they couldn't pass to him because they couldn't get in the final third of the pitch, because that team is just a joke, isn't it? Guendouzi is an accident waiting to happen. My old history teacher used to give us these essays, compare and contrast. Compare and contrast Guendouzi and McTominay, and they both same sort of physical stature. They both have the same role in the team, the fetching and carrying, providing a little bit of spark, but essentially shutting down the opposition. McTominay, from the moment he walked into the Manchester United side, looked the real deal. He looked a player you can build a team around. He's feisty. He's going to make a challenge. He'll make the fouls when they need to be made. He's a real team man. Guendouzi just runs around like a headless chuck, looking like he's going to get a red card sometime.
Yes.
It's terrible. Guendouzi needs to just watch film of McTominay to see, okay, this is your position, that's how you do it. There.
The whole Arsenal thing since we started again, they have looked like headless chickens.
Oh, they are. And Granit Xhaka, there's an existentialist question for you. Granit Xhaka. Why?
Why? Yes, if that's the question, yeah. It's very, very strange what's happened there. Perhaps it isn't. Perhaps it's been coming a long time.
I think it is. It has been coming a long time. For how many years has every football journalist and every fan been saying that Arsenal need decent centre-backs, good holding midfield player, and a creative player in midfield? And how many times have they got it?
No, it's very, very bad. So that's how Arsenal started off. My team, Tottenham, took on Manchester United. It was a 1-1 draw. We then, you and I, which we'll get to in a minute, watched my team, Tottenham, against yours, West Ham, last night. For me, with Tottenham, there was some progression in the way they played, but you would, compared to some of the other games we played, Tottenham and Manchester United at least turned up for the game.
I thought it was actually quite a good game, and I think it's a point that Tottenham were very happy with and a point that Manchester United weren't happy with, which kind of sums it up. I do think that Tottenham should have been more positive and tried to win the game much earlier than they did, but, the manager's Mourinho, and Mourinho does what Mourinho does, so,
defend first. And then second as well.
And second, yeah. And, Kane ran his socks off. I couldn't understand the criticism in the papers of Kane. I thought he actually had a great game.
Yeah,
he was making the runs, he was creating the space. There was just nobody there to move into that space. And it happened last night with Dele Alli, because the two of them were on the same wavelength.
Yeah, of course, Dele Alli didn't play in the first game. He was suspended. But, I want to get onto that criticism of Kane. I actually read people saying, he's finished. He's 26, by the way. People are saying, he's finished, that he can't play under Mourinho, which is another point. Everybody's saying he was invisible in that game against Manchester United. I saw him tracking back a lot, retrieving the ball, turning with his back to his own goal and going forward again, trying to So he lost the ball and then tracked back, and he's got some pace, tracked back, grabbed the ball off the attacking Man United player and went back at it, and he did that a lot. Now, he's not a Lineker player who just puts his toe out and no, with the greatest respect to Gary Lineker, but you didn't see him in defence a lot.
No.
Harry Kane is an all-rounder in many senses, and if I see him tracking back and tackling, bombing down the wick, I'm happy with that. I'm not expecting him to be in the box or sticking his toe out for it to bounce in the goal all the time. You can't criticise him for not scoring, because he was doing other stuff.
The only thing you can criticise, if the centre forward is making the runs, I mean, everyone who plays as a forward knows you're not going to get the ball 7 times out of 10 when you make a run. But you will, the purpose is to create space for someone else. If you don't get it, somebody else gets it in space. Now, in that first match, there wasn't anyone there to take advantage of that. Apart from the goal by Bergwijn, where everyone has ignored the fact that Kane running to his left dragged 2 Man United defenders out of the way.
And that's actually work.
That's what he's supposed to do.
Yeah.
I couldn't understand the criticism of it at all. Frankly, it was ignorant.
It's childish as well, or childlike. It's like, well, why didn't Kane score the goal? Because he was busy doing something else to enable a goal to happen. It just reminded me, Geoff, of an England game way back when we were children, and Gary Lineker was playing with Paul Gascoigne, the legend, in an England international, and Gary Lineker was bombing into the box. He did a 1-2 with Gascoigne, bombed into the box, feinted to pass to Gascoigne, and then went on to score. Gascoigne did a faint run, and the defenders followed him, and the commentator said, that's superb from Lineker. He's used him by not using him.
Absolutely.
That's what Kane did. He was the Gascoigne in that. He took the players away from it. I thought he had a good game against United.
Very good game, and if there'd been more attacking intent from Tottenham, then it would have been even better. I think they had a chance of winning that game, because Manchester United aren't great. They've come back looking a lot better than most, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean they'd not lost in 5 before the break.
They seem to have hit upon a midfield that's working, and I think McTominay is absolutely essential to that. Manchester United have hit upon a very good midfield there. I think McTominay is the one they've got to build around. Fernandes looks very, very good. He looks a very, very good player. Pogba looked good when he came on. He wasn't as good as the newspaper reports are saying. He did 2 things.
One which led to the goal.
One with minimal contact to his back, and he went down like a sack of potatoes. But I guess as a question of fact, yes, he was touched in the back. So
got to go down.
He goes down. Yeah, he wasn't anywhere near as good as the reports are saying, mind you. But when he decides to play, he's a very, very good player. He's not a world-class player by any stretch of the imagination, but he's a very good player. I would think if I was a Manchester United fan, I'd be feeling fairly positive. So far, Manchester United have looked good.
Interesting. Pogba and Kane neither have. I mean, all the teams have had 3 months off, but Pogba and Kane neither have played this year at all until that game So for both of them to look rusty is fair enough. Pogba probably got too much praise and Kane got too much criticism.
Yeah, very much so, yeah.
There was then talk in the papers about, Kane won't be flourishing under Mourinho, why was he so bad? Then you and I watched Tottenham West Ham yesterday. I thought Tottenham put in a very solid attacking performance. I think overall had 72% possession. They were passing the ball about. They were showing, to me, a good shape. Each player knew where the other one was. Very few passes, which is something I noticed this season, but very few passes went astray, which they had been doing during the Pochettino reign and then well into the Mourinho one. But yesterday, at least the passes are going to the right player.
Yeah, but can I just interject here and say what possibly you are on your way to saying, but who were they playing against? The Hammers were terrible.
I did really want to say how good Tottenham were, but it was who they were up against.
Exactly. Yeah. It was very difficult to look good against that West Ham team last night. They have all the appearance of not playing for their manager. There was not the energy level there that you expect to see. Look at how Leicester and Sheffield United, for example, look at how they defend. Even look at Brighton, because that's another good example. They engage high up the pitch. They don't allow you to get within 30 yards without there being a challenge. West Ham were allowing Tottenham to get to the edge of the penalty area before attempting a challenge. It was shocking. And I kept saying to you, well, what's the shape? I can't see any shape there.
They didn't look terrible in the sense that they were falling over each other, but as soon as Tottenham did come in wave after wave of attack, because they were allowed to. And it did look like as soon as Lloris played the ball out and the defence played it out to the midfield, it was almost as if, Kane was saying to the West Ham players, would you mind stepping back a little bit, please? We've got things to do here.
Well, yeah, when you're... I know this from when I played. When you're not having a good game, when your confidence level isn't very high... as a forward, you have a choice when you come up against a defender. Do I take him on, or do I check back and make the back pass, retain possession, if you like, pass the responsibility onto someone else? And that's what West Ham were doing last night in attack. Everyone, we'll check back, we'll pass the responsibility. And in defence, no one was taking the responsibility to shut down the space and to make a challenge. It was all, okay, if we just take a yard further back, then, they're still playing in front of us, so that's okay. All those times you mentioned of Tottenham having the ball and moving forwards, there were always more West Ham players goal side than Tottenham players. Yeah. It shouldn't have been dangerous.
It shouldn't have been.
But if you don't engage, then it's pointless. You may as well put cones out.
Well, and it did look a bit like that at times, again, going back to Kane, I thought he had a very, very good game last night.
Very good
he was superb. He had 2 or 3 shots saved, a couple over the bar, a header over the bar. Of course, he scored a goal late on. A few other players for Tottenham looked good, but the thing is, they were playing against your team, West Ham.
Well, yeah, and the position Kane plays, he was up against Balbuena. Now, as a centre forward, you have to engage the centre back. Now, if Kane was up against Diop, he would not have had a good. Diop is a world class centre back. He was up against Balbuena, who's an accident waiting to happen. So, okay, that was much easier for him. And Fredericks at the right back. Well, okay, West Ham wouldn't be looking for a right back if Fredericks was the answer. So, and how many goals have West Ham conceded through the right back channel this season?
Yeah, Tottenham were
90% of them.
Tottenham were trying to exploit it all. You could see the heads were going up and looking in that direction every time we got the ball in midfield. But enough about Tottenham. We won 2-0, and I think easily deserved 2-0.
Oh, yeah, very much so.
There was nothing in that game to say it would have been any other result.
No, if it had been 3, you could still, as a West Ham fan, you shrug and say, well, yeah, it was.
Fair enough, yeah. But West Ham now, because Brighton have also drawn their game yesterday and beaten Arsenal, Brighton, who are in the relegation battle, are now throwing the gauntlet down to West Ham, and West Ham were pretty abject, as you said. It wasn't like they were terrible in the sense that they were falling over and missing things. They just weren't trying or knowing what they were supposed to do. Does that worry you now, relegation-wise?
Yeah, very much, because they're not playing for Moyes, so why will the next match be any different? I think the thing that can save West Ham is if Villa and Bournemouth don't get enough points. But there's nothing West Ham are going to do that's going to keep them up.
So you've just got to hope everybody else is worse than you are?
Yes.
Do you deserve to stay up, do you think? Well, whatever that means.
No. It's hard to say, because up until the time when Fabianski got injured, we were doing okay. We were doing well. Fabianski getting injured was the turning point, and all those goals that went in and the matches we lost with the reserve goalkeeper whose name I can't remember, but he's been got rid of now.
Yeah.
That was a difference. And then there's an injury to centre-back, putting Rice as a centre-back. Well, that's stupid. I've never understood this. Even Guardiola does it. When he loses a centre-back, he takes Fernandinho, who's one of the best holding midfield players in the world, and plays him at centre-back. So you have a second-class centre-back, and you've lost the best holding player in midfield. I don't understand the logic of it. And West Ham have done the same. They put Rice into right centre-back, and it doesn't work.
No. David Moyes yesterday, when they cut to the bench, looked like a frightened deer caught in the headlights.
That's the point, and players can see it.
One of the things that Mourinho does when he's not being petulant, he does ooze confidence.
Yes.
And he sits, he's obviously had some acting lessons or something, but he does sit very calmly on the bench, and he looks like he's deeply in thought, like he knows something. Moyes looks like he's panicking inside and, having an anxiety attack or something. He looks like, oh my God, what's happening? What do I do? Help me, help me. Whereas Mourinho looks like he's either going to say, this is all your fault we lost, I know what I'm doing. At least he looks like he knows what he's doing.
Yeah.
And that gets through to the players.
And with 20 minutes to go, Moyes brings on Felipe Anderson and Lanzini, two of the best midfield players in the world. This is the thing for West Ham fans. They're going to lose Anderson and Lanzini to top flight sides. They'll lose Rice to the same, and Diop and Fabianski. They will all go to top 5 sides in England or Spain.
And that will spell the end of that team, that West Ham team.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah.
There's a big rebuild. If they stay up, there's a big rebuild job to do there. If they go down, they might not be able to get straight back up again then.
Yeah, quite likely. But why are Lanzini and Addison on the bench? Why? They're our best players.
Yeah, you don't. I mean, when you're struggling and you're looking to try and stay up, you use whatever you can, and that would generally be your best players, wouldn't it?
Yeah, and they paid 42 million for Sebastian Haller. Where was he last night? On the bench.
By the way, he was your record signing.
Yeah, he's got a goal record in the Bundesliga of a goal every 2 games, which is
wonderful. Yeah,
it's exactly what you want from a top level striker. And he's sat on the bench. Lanzini, one of the best inside forwards in the world, is sat on the bench. Felipe Anderson, one of the best wide players in the world, sat on the bench. You just say, why?
I mean, apart from hitting the post late on with a free kick last night, he never looked like they're ever going to score. They didn't look like there was a player who could score.
Well, Bowen worked very hard and got into some good positions, but no. But again, it's that when you're low on confidence, you don't take the chance of taking the player on. You protect the ball. You turn back inside. You protect it, and that's what West Ham are doing. Yeah. And they didn't hold on to the ball long enough to give the defence some rest. The ball kept coming back on Tottenham's side. Within 30 seconds of being cleared. It was one way. It was like a training match.
Yeah. Your next game is at home to Chelsea. So no rest there. In fact, you've got home away, which actually spells out ha 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 ha, which is kind of your season.
Yeah.
Or at least the way everybody else is looking at it. What about Liverpool, though? Because we've noticed a bit of a tendency that some of the teams that weren't very good before the break have come back looking really good, like Brighton.
That's right.
And the teams that were doing really well have sort of hit and miss. Sheffield United, Leicester, drawn both games so far. Both those teams don't look good. And then Liverpool look a bit rusty as well.
They did look rusty, yes. They do have real quality, and they've got a great manager.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to win the league. They're, 20 points ahead or whatever. But against Everton, which is traditionally a draw anyway, you were telling me.
Well, it's traditionally a 0-0 draw.
0-0 draw, which is what it was.
Yeah.
Everton could and should have probably won it.
They could have won it. They hit the post very late on. Whether they should have won it, no, I don't think so. It was a 0-0 draw, and that's the right result, and it's the same result that it's been for the last 6 years, all but one time when Mane scored a winner for Liverpool in the 93rd minute or something.
So no surprise then, really, I suppose.
No, it's no surprise, but I think Ancelotti he set his team up extremely well. I mean, Liverpool play 4-3-3, as we know, with the fullbacks, their main attacking threat. Okay, so what do you do to compound that? Well, firstly, Everton's main attacking threat is also their fullbacks, Coleman and Dean. There on the pitch, you could have had 4 of the best 6 fullbacks in the Premier League,
right? And
arguably in Europe, actually. Had Robertson been playing for Liverpool, the 2 sets of fullbacks cancelled each other out. So what Ancelotti had to do was, if it had been normal 4-3-3 against 4-4-2, then Everton would obviously have been outnumbered. But because he could, using the fullbacks, he had his 4 playing very narrow, they outnumbered the 3 in midfield of Everton. So Liverpool's midfield are basically ball winners.
Right.
Plus, and one of them, either Keita or Wijnaldum, whichever one plays, is a fetch and carrier and attacks a bit more. So, Ancelotti was just very clever. He the right formation with the right players, shut Liverpool down.
got the points he probably thought he would.
Well, exactly. It's the point he wanted, yeah.
The points he wanted, yeah. So Liverpool still marching on. They're still going to win it. There was nothing terrible there. Mo Salah didn't play, did he? So obviously they've got him to come yet as well. So they can only improve on their 1 point away from home in a game which always ends up that way anyway.
Yes.
So nothing much to be learnt there really. But some of the other games have thrown up some very strange results.
Well, yeah, and the Brighton beating the Wanderers was one of them.
The biggest one. And then Crystal Palace won their first game. I said that Palace are all, that they've got nothing to play for, but then of course Crystal Palace are pushing for a possible fringe European spot. I didn't think I'd hear myself saying that at the beginning of the season.
Well, Crystal Palace traditionally have one good season and a bad season. That like up and down clubs do. But usually their good seasons come off the back of really good performances by Wilf Zaha. This season's different. He hasn't been the force that he has been before. He's been injured a lot. So you have to hold your hand up and say, well, actually, the manager knows what he's doing, and the players are doing what they're being asked to do. They are a genuine team.
Roy Hodgson, 74, is he, or 72?
Yeah, something like that.
It's shocking, isn't it, in the 21st century when a man has got to keep working well past pension age.
I know, it's awful.
He's a not quietly confident style manager. I mean, father figure type, I suppose, and the one the kind that talks to players. But again, at least he looks like he knows what he's doing, which he does.
Yes.
But he doesn't look terrified, which David Moyes does, and Arteta. But you can't tell with him really what's in his mind. But Roy Hodgson, decent manager, yeah.
Yeah, he's always been a good manager, and he keeps it very simple. Players understand what they have to do, and Crystal Palace don't have the resources to go out and get fantastic attacking players.
No,
their strength is their defence and their midfield. And when Zaha, when he flashes, then they look exceptional. But this season it hasn't been mainly Zaha; it's been the team as a whole. And I defy anybody to tell me, with the exception of Zaha, who scores the goals for Crystal Palace, because nobody knows.
Nobody knows, no, which it might be a good thing that they're finding goals elsewhere, because he could be on the move. They've done well to hang on to him, really.
Well, they have, but he's, 26, 27?
Yeah.
He's got to be looking for a big move somewhere, look after his future and all the rest of it. So, I mean, good luck to him and good luck to Palace. They're where they are because they deserve to be.
So those are sort of the highlights of the opening round of games. You talked there about Manchester United, and the Tottenham goal that came against Manchester United was through a mistake by David De Gea, who has been, it's a trademark, one of the best goalkeepers in the world.
Well, he's never been one of the best goalkeepers in the world, but for 2 years he's been near the bottom of the Premier League goalkeepers league tables. It's, in fact, second bottom 2 years in a row for a number of mistakes which led directly to goals.
You mentioned Lloris earlier, who sometimes, another deer caught in the headlights. Lloris sometimes makes some fumbles, but he's also an excellent keeper, as he showed against United.
Yes.
But De Gea does make a lot of fumbles.
He makes a lot of mistakes, and his downside became much more visible after that terrible mistake in the World Cup, where he let a soft shot from Ronaldo through his legs into the goal. And that does seem to have affected his confidence, because for 2 seasons now he's been poor. And, Ollie saying, De Gea's the best goalkeeper in the world. No, it's not even close. He's not close to being the best goalkeeper at Manchester United. Because there is a Manchester United goalkeeper that's actually in second place in the goalkeepers' stats chart, except that he's on loan to Sheffield United.
Henderson, of
course. Dean Henderson is a much better goalkeeper. And Dean Henderson has got a good shout, I would say, along with Pope, for being the best English goalkeeper in the league.
Yeah, Nick Pope has got more, 11, I think, so far, or up until the break anyway, the lockdown break. Nick Pope had more clean sheets than any other keeper in the Premier League. Yeah. And yet, he's not the first choice England keeper, not even the second choice England keeper, is he?
No, the man who is in possession, if you like, of the England keeper's shirt is, according to the stats, the third best, which I think is probably right.
It is very so. So De Gea, you think, should be on his way out from United, and
if they can get money for him, yeah, definitely.
Because the way Solskjaer, because it's obviously in the press's minds, and they have been asking Solskjaer about it, he seems to think he wants to hang on to De Gea. Henderson is on loan, as you say, at Sheffield United, and it looks like, from the way Solskjaer is speaking, he'll be there for another year.
Well, yeah, but part of Solskjaer's job is not to say anything that will destroy the transfer value of players they want to get rid of. He's got to talk De Gea up in order order to keep the price high.
Yeah, that is a good point. But interestingly, this week, and we're going to come to the games in a moment, Manchester United's second game, which is this week, midweek, they play Sheffield United. Manchester United are at home. Part of the loan contract is that Henderson is not allowed to play against Manchester United. So the keeper that's done so well for him all season, now we've come to a big game because this is like a European spot game, isn't it?
Yeah.
And he's not allowed to play. Is that? I mean, that's a general thing in contracts. Do you think that's a good idea, or?
Well, it was actually illegal according to FA rules until 2 seasons ago when it was changed. It used to be illegal to say you couldn't.
Oh, you're right. Yeah.
But from pressure from the big clubs who've obviously got more players out on loan, they caved into that, which is a great shame.
It is, yeah.
And I just hope it doesn't affect the result. But knowing the luck that Manchester United have, it probably will.
Yes, yeah. I mean, I suppose it could go two ways. The loyalty of the player will be called into question. So better not to play him, so that he doesn't have to go through that.
I don't think so. They're professionals. When they're on the pitch, those sorts of things aren't in your head. You're just trying to do the best you can on the pitch. So I don't think a goalkeeper would do anything to jeopardise his own team, because he's got to go back into the dressing room with those guys.
He's got to get on the bus home with them. Yeah. Just before we move on to this week's games, you mentioned De Gea there. Roy Keane, who we also mentioned in the podcast earlier, ex-Man United player, known for being a bit of a, I don't want to say bully, but known for sharing his mind, shall we say. When he was talking about De Gea, he was saying after the Tottenham game that if he was the other players, he wouldn't let him on the team bus on the way home. Well, yeah. Was he that bad?
I suppose you have to say yes, he was, because to let that shot in that came only slightly to his left, but into his stomach, and he managed to spoon it into the goal. It was a terrible, terrible mistake. It was actually easier to catch it.
It was easier to catch it, yeah. It did spill it.
But you have to remember that Roy Keane is paid a lot of money to make these extravagant claims, to say things which are going to get the organisation that pays him into the newspapers and onto the television. And yes, that's the purpose of it.
All right, let's move on to this week's games between now and the next podcast. As I say, Man United, Sheffield United tonight. A lot of games tonight. Man United, Sheffield United. We'll run through these quickly because obviously by the time this podcast comes out, most of these games will be played.
Yeah, home win.
Home win, agreed. Newcastle, Aston Villa.
Home win.
Yep. Norwich, Everton. Away win.
Away win.
Yeah. Wolves, Bournemouth. Now you'll be hoping that Wolves.
Home win.
Yeah, and Liverpool, Palace.
Home win.
Home win. Easy. That was easy, and I think we'll be right with all of those. Thursday, Burnley against Watford. Both, Burnley misfiring now.
They are, aren't they? Yeah. I'll say they'll come good. Home win.
All right, good. And then Southampton against Arsenal. Come on, you Saints.
Come on, you Saints, yeah.
I think Southampton might fancy that, but I think Arsenal will finally start firing. They've got to. Well, you can't lose 3 in a row.
They have to, don't they? Let's say a draw.
Yeah, draw. And here's a tasty one. Chelsea against Manchester City. I'm going for the draw in that one.
A draw, yeah.
Then on Saturday, Villa against Wolves.
Draw.
Yep. Watford against Southampton is on Sunday, so that we're back around to the next round again.
Away win.
Away win. I'm going to go for a draw. Crystal Palace against Burnley, that's another good one.
Home win.
And then I'm going to go for a draw on that one. And finally, before we do the podcast again, next Tuesday, so a week yesterday, I suppose, Brighton are at home to Manchester United.
Away win.
Away win. Manchester United on a bit of a roll, and they will be if they continue with the way we're predicting it.
Yeah, talking about results, since the start of, or the restart of the league, there have been 7 home wins, 10 away wins, and 8 draws. 9 draws.
9 draws. That's interesting because we did say there's been a tendency for more away wins. That's still carrying on. Apart from in games where you'd expect a home win, like Brighton against Arsenal. But Tottenham against West Ham. The bookies and everybody else knew that was going to be a win for Tottenham. But some very surprising and some draws that shouldn't have been draws. Leicester last night.
Yeah.
But yeah, some very strange. And it is still more away wins than home wins.
Well, what happened in Germany was a spike of away wins. And it's gradually recovering to become almost a third. Home wins, and you look at this: 7 home wins, 10 away wins, 9 draws.
Yeah,
it's getting to be the same in England.
It is, and that we think, and I think we're right. Obviously, it's because there's no crowd there.
The crowd has a significant impact. Yeah, I mean, there is research by a couple of universities in the effect of the crowd on the referees, and it is a quite discernible and measurable effect. And that being removed looks as if it's evening itself out to be, home has no advantage whatsoever, but equally away doesn't have an advantage
either. No. So it's just on on how you play.
Yeah, so they may as well have all gone somewhere and played at neutral venues.
They could have done. They could have all just played on some playing field somewhere. Right, that's all we've got time for. But before we say our goodbyes, time for the question and answer to Geoff's trivia question.
Okay, the question was, who holds the record for the most career top-flight goals? So that's Premier League or First Division. For our younger listeners, there was football before Sky.
Really? Yes.
The top of it was called the First Division because it was the first.
The first one. It was clever. That I
know. Anyway, the answer was, with 357 goals, Jimmy Greaves.
Yeah, oh, wow. Yeah, Tottenham.
Yeah, well, Chelsea, Tottenham and West Ham.
Chelsea, Tottenham. He played for some clubs there and scored many goals for all of them.
Yeah, and he scored a few for Barnet as well, which were probably more important than any of them.
Jimmy Greaves holds the record for most goals in the top flight.
Yes, so there were strikers before Alan Shearer.
Yeah, there were strikers before Alan Shearer. Nice. That is all we've got time for. Thank you very much for listening. I'm Chris Karle.
And I'm Geoff Saunders.
And that was Hitting the Bar, the football podcast. Join us next week.